What's going on, guys? The spoilers for My Hero Academia chapter 289 have just come out, and it has defied expectations in a big way. Shigaraki proves his status as the world's most resilient cockroach, as he just won't take a breather, even after AFO told him to retreat in the last chapter. As usual, I'll be doing a breakdown of the fully translated chapter in a few days, which is always more detailed than these spoiler reviews, so make sure you hit that sub button so you don't miss that. Okay, so the chapter kicks off with Nejire and Ida heading towards the main battlefield where Shigaraki is located. She questions why Ida is following her because only flying heroes were supposed to visit the main battlefield. Because of Shigaraki's decay quirk, anyone who can't fly is pretty much screwed if he decides to use it. And back in chapter 274, Endeavor requested that only heroes who can fly come to assist him. Despite that, Ida felt it was his duty to go because Deku, Bakugo and Todoroki are all there, and at this moment he has no idea if they're okay because Shigaraki destroyed their communication system. As a random side note, both Mirio and Tamaki have had big moments in this series before, and Nejire is the only member of the big three without one of these. I mean, yeah, she's had some smaller wins here and there, but maybe now that she's about to enter the fray, it's time for her to get this type of win. Or she could just die, but I prefer not to think about that outcome. Moving on, we see Deku falling from the sky, and Todoroki comes to the rescue yet again to save Midoriya. I need you to appreciate how much Shoto is doing right now. He's holding Bakugo in his left hand, holding Endeavor in his right arm, and then he's balancing Deku on his back. I mean, whilst flying with only one leg. Is there nothing he cannot do? Once they land on the ground, we see that everyone is still alive for now, although Bakugo has blood around his mouth and no one is actually responsive. Shoto starts to access the first aid kit in his belt, and in the background we see that Shigaraki, who he was falling down in the last chapter, but out of nowhere he activates the force quirk activation tentacles and uses a bunch of them to just suspend himself in the air. Like I said, AFO specifically told him in the last chapter to retreat and recover and get his body to full health, but Shiggy defies those orders and basically says he's not listening. When the chapter comes out, you'll see it, but once again, Shigaraki has a twisted, evil expression on his face, which maybe indicates that his mission to take one for all may not be over just yet. At this moment, Nejire and Ida both arrive on the battlefield, and Shoto asks Ida to take Deku and Bakugo out of there. This is probably a good idea because I do not know what Tenya intends to do against Shigaraki. I mean, his quirk is very close range, it's just not a good idea for Tenya to engage Shigaraki at this moment. We see Nejire unleash her quirk in Shigaraki's direction, and Shoto notices that the villain is looking a lot weaker than before. The scene then pans over to Ochaco and Toga, and these guys were not on the battlefield, but instead they were in the suburbs of Jakku City. Toga had her pinned down in the last chapter, but in this one we see that Uraraka manages to push Toga off her body and sends the villain flying sideways. Toga tries to express her feelings and says that she always wants to transform into the person she likes, before revealing something that Ochaco did not want to hear. Back in My Villain Academia, as I'm sure you will remember, Toga used Uraraka's blood to turn herself into Ochaco and then proceeded to use the gravity quirk to kill someone. In the present day, Ochaco has a horrified expression upon hearing this news, and she tries to apprehend Toga with the wires in her costume. Toga dodges this and then fires back with some syringes that appear to miss, but from the leaked panels it's unclear if they managed to scrape Ochaco, because if they scraped her, then maybe Toga did get some blood. The scene ends with Toga stealing the All Might keychain that Deku gave to Ochaco before asking her if Midoriya is the person that she likes. As usual, Ochaco does not directly answer that question and instead just tries to capture the villain. Froppy then appears at this moment, and so Toga begins to retreat, presumably because she's outnumbered. As she returns to the League of Villains, she begins to cry and regrets that she didn't get the chance to talk about love because both her and Ochaco like the same person, who is obviously this ultimate Chad right here. In the final page, we get some awesome close-ups of Shigaraki's face, of Ida, Nejire, Endeavor, Deku, Dabi, Shoto, and Gigantomachia. Endeavor and Deku look really beaten up in their close-ups, like they're not going to be active anytime soon, whereas Dabi's close-up was quite funny in that he was practicing his best, I want to call it a pretty boy pose, something like that. Like he's in a boy band or something. I don't know. It looked really funny. You'll see it when the chapter comes out. It's interesting to note that the caption at the end of this chapter says the war is reaching its finale. So it's interesting that it goes out its way to specify that. I guess things really are about to end. And as soon as Dabi reaches the battlefield and, gives his big speech and does his plan, then yeah, it might be over. So I reckon by the end of November, this whole thing should be wrapped up and we'll get some clear ideas of how things are. Also, for those of you who may have been wondering about the strange title of this chapter, it means a frank person and a secretive person, which is referencing how Toga is literally just telling Ochaco everything, whereas Ochaco wasn't really giving too much away. Anyway, that was the spoiler review for this week. Make sure to turn on notifications so you don't miss the chapter review, and I also have a theory dropping tomorrow that you probably don't want to miss. Until then, peace out.